Yo, what's good people, it's JayCactus, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you everything that you need to know about using 808s and drill beats. I'll be showing you how to tune your 808s, what notes to put them on, and most importantly how to use 808 slides. So let's get into it. Alright, so usually when I'm making a beat, I'll start with the melody, maybe a counter melody, definitely either a snare, clap or rim, and then hi-hats. And then as soon as I've got some kind of bounce, I'll start working on my 808s. So this is what I'm working with so far. Now the first step to 808 college is literally just picking a good 808 sample. I know it seems so simple, but trust me, so many people get this step wrong. For drill 808s, you want an 808 that's quite long, you want some distortion in it, maybe for it to sound a bit deep as well, so literally any of these. Like that one's perfect for drill. This is the one I've chosen for this beat. If I show you on an EQ, you can see that it's got all the sub and bass frequencies, but there is some high energy as well up in the mids, and that's what's going to help it cut through phones and laptop speakers. And then I want to make sure that slides are actually going to sound good. So the way that I test that is just make sure that this is set to cut itself, and then I'll literally press a key, for example C, and then press it an octave up. Try some of the other notes. It's just going to give you a general idea of how the slides are going to sound. The next thing that you want to do is make sure that your 808 is actually tuned. And what I mean by that is if I press C on the keyboard, the note that's playing needs to be C. Some people design packs and they don't label everything, and they might design an 808 in G and then just save it. So when you drag it back in and press C, you're actually pressing G. And the way to check that is by coming in here, right click, edit in audio editor, just click this tool and then detect pitch regions. You can see this one's in C. Whenever I design my packs, I tune everything to C so you don't have to. So now I want to make sure that the 808 only plays for as long as I hold the note, so there's nothing overlapping. To do that, you need to turn on the envelope. The attack is the amount of time it's going to take it to reach its maximum volume. So if it's brought up, you can see it slides in just like the shape of that attack. So I'm going to bring this right down because I want it to come in instantly. The release is how long it's going to take the sound to release. So if it's all the way up, it's going to have a fade out. If I bring it all the way down, it's going to stop as soon as I let go. After the attack, this is how long the note can hold, and then the sound decays until it gets to the sustain level. So what I like to do is just turn everything down except for the hold, and then sometimes I bring the attack up just a little bit, only if the 808 has a big punch at the beginning, because sometimes when it's got a punch, it will clash with the kick. So if you know that you're putting a kick in there, then try and bring the attack up just a little bit. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it can lower the volume too much, but I know for this one, I can bring the attack up just a tiny bit. And it's just going to save a bit of room for the kick. Alright, so now I want to show you what notes your 808 should be on. Now let's say this is your melody. You've drawn in some chords, you've come up with a counter melody, and you don't know how to work out where the bass note should be. Generally speaking, bass notes should always follow the root notes of the chords. There are some exceptions which I'm going to show you, but just to make it simple, you want to find the root notes of these chords. And to find the root notes, you need to remember the pattern of chords. So to find any minor chord, the pattern would go like this. So you've got one note and then it will go up 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's for any minor chord. D sharp would be the root note. So if I'm looking up here, I can see I've got a G minor chord because it's starting on G and it's following that same pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I can put a G here. It sounded weird because I've got halftime on. The other chord that you want to look for is major chords. So major chords follow a different pattern. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So the only difference is the middle note. That's minor, that's major. So every scale that you work in will have a combination of minor and major chords. So they're what you want to look for. So we figured out this one, it's G minor. And now you might be looking at this one thinking, I've no idea where the bass note should be because it doesn't follow any of them patterns. And what I've done here is something called an inversion. So an inversion is basically when you've got a chord, let's say this G minor chord, and you take any of the notes and just bring it up or down an octave. So I'm going to take this D, bring it down an octave. It's the same chord except the D is in a different position now. So I'm going to bring that back up, and then to work out what chord I've played here, I'm just going to try and invert some of them. So if I bring the D up, I've still not got a chord, but what if I bring both of them up? Alright, so now I can see I've got a C minor chord because it's following that pattern. Look, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can bring that down and I know I've got a C minor chord there. So this first one was G, a C here, and I'm just following the same chords. They're basically just repeating themselves apart from this bit, but I've got halftime effect on, so that's why it's sustaining. So now I know that G and C are my bass notes of these chords. So that's going to help me with my 808s. So now we've got our 808 tune, the envelope set, we know where we need to put the notes. So instantly if I put a G here and a C here, it's going to work, but it's just going to sound boring. right? So them 808s are in key, but we need to spice it up a bit. So then at this stage, you just want to listen to the melody that you've created, keep it on the loop, and then just try and hum the 808s in your head. Try and imagine where they'd fit or where it would sound right. Because now that you know that you're using them two main notes, G and C, it should make it a bit easier. So now I'm thinking of something like this. I can't get the notes right with my voice, but that's the general idea. You just want to try and hum the pattern in your head first. So the first note is G, and I usually like to play the first note until the snare hits. You don't always have to do that. There's no rules to this really, but this is just how I like to do it. And then I heard a short one here. So I'm going to bring in another one because I can hear two there. And then I'm going to press C, shift, and then click just to cut it. And now it's got two notes. And then the G's coming back up. So I heard two there in my head, so I'm going to cut that again. And then I want to copy these two. So I'm going to hold Control, click and drag over them, hold Shift, click and drag them over. So this is just the basic pattern that I'm hearing. So I've got the pattern, now I need to work out the slides. So to create a slide note, there's two ways you can do it. You can press S, which is the hotkey, and you can see that slides turned on here. Now if I draw a note, you can see that it's got a slide icon on it. The other way is to draw in a normal note and then double clicking it and then click this option to activate slide and then accept. So now what happens is the first note's gonna play, so G will hit, and then when it gets to this point where the slide is, it's gonna take this small amount of time for it to slide up from G5 to A sharp 5. And then it's just going to cut off where the note ends. And the longer you make this slide, the longer it's going to take for it to actually slide to that note. I'll bring it further up so you can hear it easier. Right, so it's taking that amount of time for it to slide from G5 to G6, and then it's cutting off here. If I brought it back, it's going to start sliding straight away. I can make it shorter. I usually have my grid on quarter step just because I like to add in some small slides and some longer ones, so it gives you a bit more flexibility. So where the C hits, I want it to slide up a full octave, so it's just going from C5 to C6. So I'm going to draw in a slide here, I'm going to make it slide up quick. So now it's going to hit this C, straight away it's going to slide up to C6, and then when it hits this note, it's going to come back to C5. Yeah, just like that. Usually when I'm adding slides, I like to put the slide notes in the same notes as my chords. So because I've got ghost notes activated, I can see my chords here. So usually when I'm adding slides, I'll try and work in the same chords. And most of the time it sounds right. And for the positioning, I usually like to add them at the end of a bar. In my experience, it just sounds better. So right here, you can see I've got the end of the second bar. So what I usually like to do is keep the root note of the chord at the beginning of every bar. So G5, if I was going to put a bass note at the beginning here, it would be on C, just because it's the root note. But then if you put in slides at the end of the bar, that's when you can use passive notes. So you can use notes which aren't really the root note of the chord. But I just like to use the other notes that are in the same chord. So for example, I could try this one, D sharp. So that sounds good as well. So just try and remember that. Just stick with root notes at the beginning of the bar and then passive notes towards the end of the bar. So let's try another slide here. So it can hit, come straight up, and then maybe into this note here because that's in the same chord. And then I'll add one more here. Yeah, that sounds sick. So now you could just repeat this pattern, but I always like to make it a little bit interesting. I think if you've got a 4 bar that just constantly repeats, it'll get a bit boring. So try and switch it up for the second bit. So in the next 4 bars, I'll still use the root note, but this time I'm going to make it slide down. You don't always have to make notes slide up. So I'll just bring this over, double click, and I might repeat that here. In fact, I'll make it slide down a full octave. And then add something in between. So right now I'm hearing 2 notes here. But I'll bring one of the slide notes over, just hold shift and click and drag. So now it's going to hit C, slide up, and then hit C again. I'll make this one a little bit longer, and let's try bringing it up an octave. So I'll just select it, press Control and up, and then see how this sounds. And then what I'm hearing now is 2 quite high here. So I'm going to cut this. And now the slide notes, I'm actually going to bring these up 2 octaves. It's just what I'm hearing in my head. And then another one here. And remember, the higher up that you put the 808s, the more high frequencies there's going to be. And high frequencies are always easier to hear. So try and bring the volume down a little bit because it won't sound consistent. So I can press Control, click and drag to highlight them, and then just hold Alt and scroll the mouse wheel down. And you can see the velocity is changing. It should be fine. And then I can do something similar for the end, but switch up the last few slides. So now we've got this. Sounds cold. And another quick tip is I generally don't like to make my kick, 808 and snare hit at the same time. You'll just find that it peaks a lot and it can sound muddy. So to me, this pattern's ready, but I'm going to show you a few more gems. So the first one's going to be a reverse 808. So I'm going to get rid of this slide and I'll put the reverse here. So I'm going to highlight this and press Shift and click to copy it. Now with this one, I'm going to turn it into a slide note. And with this bottom one, I'm going to bring the volume all the way down and I'll bring this back on top of it. Now what's going to happen is that note's going to basically slide into itself and it's going to sound reversed. Sounds sick. And then the next one's the delay effect. So I'll get rid of these slides. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to halve these. So there's 4 of them. Now let's take a slide and let's try it up a couple octaves. Same for these ones. So it's happening 4 times. But let's try it another octave. But now what I'm going to do is highlight all of them and then right click and drag the velocity down. So it looks like it's fading out. So now it's going to sound like an echo. It's a sick effect. The last thing that I'm going to do is just pan some of the notes. So I'm going to come down here, go to pan, and then where I've got a couple notes like here, I'll pan 1 right and then 1 left. Doesn't matter how much you do it. I just try to balance it though. Let's see what this sounds like. If you've got headphones on, it sounds sick. You could also create a drop. So if I bring in another note here, we'll just stick on C. I'm going to copy it. I'll just bring it up 1 octave and then I'll make this bottom one a slide. I'm keeping the volume the same, but it's going to hit C6 and slide down to C5. And this is good to use at the end of 8 bars or 4 bars. Just creates a drop effect. Alright, so now that we've got the 808 pattern locked, I'll show you where to put the kicks. So the easiest thing to do is just press Ctrl and C on the 808 and then Ctrl and V in the kick. And then get rid of all of the slide notes, you won't need them. Then you can press Ctrl and A to highlight everything, Alt and K to bring it all down to C, and then press Shift and D to make them all the same length. So this is the easiest way, but I also like to take out some of the kicks. I don't want the kick to hit every time the 808 does. And I also don't want the kick to clash with the snare. So we could just start taking some out. For this one, I want to create a bounce. I'm actually just going to reduce the volume of this middle one. So see, when this 808 kick and snare hit, it just sounded muddy and distorted. So I'm going to take this one out. Maybe there's too much going on here too. Bounce is crazy. So if you pick a good kick sample and a good 808 sample from the start, then you won't really need to mix them. But just to show you how to quickly mix your kick and 808 just to make them work well together, I'm going to sidechain, but I'm not going to use the standard method. So what you want to do is pull up an EQ on the kick and work out where it's hitting. So it's just going to be the bright area. You can see I've already brought mine to around about 60 Hertz. So now I know that the kick's hitting at 60 Hertz. The 808 is hitting around the same area. So that's what can cause clashes. So you want to pull up a fruity peak controller on the kick, make sure that mute is unchecked. I'm going to bring the volume down, and then in the 808, in the EQ here, you want it on the same frequency that the kick's hitting, so around about 60 Hertz. Right click here, link to controller, select this, and then peak control peak. In this bit, you want to select inverted, and then change this to 0.5, and then hit accept. And now when I play it, the kick is going to make the 808 duck, but only in that same frequency range. And if you don't want it to duck as much, just bring the volume back. So now you've got the kick and the 808 working well together and you haven't made the 808 duck too much. When you use a limiter to do it, it will chop out a lot of the 808 and it'll get rid of that beefiness. So this is a good solution. But now I'm going to add my percussion, any other elements that I want for the track, and I'll show you what I come up with. Alright, so I've mixed and arranged most of it and I'll show you what I've got. So I've just added a filter effect for the intro. and portal just to make it sound weird. Drop sounds sick. So this is the first 808 pattern, and then it comes into the second one. So you can hear the choir and vocals coming now. And now everything slows down. It's got a crazy bounce, man. So I hope you liked the video and I hope you were feeling the beat. If you need some 808s to get started, then check the link in the description and make sure you get the free drum kit. If you want any other videos, then let me know in the comments and I'll see you next time. We'll be right back.